Typhoon Maysak, or Chiding here in the Philippines, continues to push off towards the west. The good news, this storm system is weakening here on the 4th of April 2015. It is a Saturday, the day prior to Easter, so we have a lot of people traveling across the Philippines today. Good news, the storm system has weakened, but make no doubt about it, if you are still ahead of this, you want to be making preparations, especially along the eastern seaboards of Luzon, around the Casiguran area and just north of there. But what we're already seeing is warnings even put in place farther down here towards the south due to the fact that this is just going to be skimming along the southeastern coast of Luzon over the course of Saturday and eventually making landfall here by early Sunday morning. Let's take a look at the infrared imagery, and what we can see is our storm system still continuing to wrap up, and what we actually have here on Saturday morning is a burst of convection, so that wind shear is starting to decrease a little. We still expect de-intensification, but not rapid de-intensification as we were seeing over the past 48 hours, and this is going to be a big rainmaker as it does continue to track on that westerly track with most of the rainfall there in northeastern portions of Luzon. Actually, right now, winds at 65 gusting to 95 knots, pressure at 975 HPA. This storm, as far as the winds and pressure are concerned, is barely holding on to that typhoon intensity. It's still there. Microwave imagery, we can still see an eye wall with a little bit of an eye. Look, at most of the convection is on the eastern periphery. We have all that dry air wrapping around it, but it's still, especially within that center cone, is a potent storm. And what we're going to be seeing is definitely some high winds out of this. Even that threat of storm surge, Pagasa has put out, you could be seeing some areas about 1 to 2 meters high, especially in that right front circulation. And I'll get on to that in a second, because even the threat even farther down here towards the south. Here's the latest track from the Japan Meteorological Agency with that landfall there around Casiguran, or just north of there as well. And what we're going to be seeing as well with Pagasa is that landfall in the same area according to their forecast track. So very good news. Agencies are agreeing with each other. I remember last year at Hagupit we had what I called the agency wars. Didn't really care for that all too much. But everybody's really in line here. It does look like numerical guidance is also in place with that landfall around Casiguran, or just there towards the north. Take a look at the signal force warnings in place at this time. As I mentioned, we do have signal force 2 in that darker purple, and the lighter purple is a little bit off there towards the northwest. Got this from K Weather there on Facebook. She put this together, a pretty good graphic just depicting the latest warnings from Pagasa, at least at this time. And what I mean by these signal force warnings, what we're seeing is the winds, as far as the winds are concerned, over the course of the next 12 to 24 hours. But I don't really like showing the signal force warnings all that too much, because they are ever changing. It's one thing I don't really like about it too much, because if we had the classic system of typhoon warnings and watches, then this entire area would probably be under a typhoon watch at this time by signal force 1, because it kind of gives you a sense feeling that the storm system isn't really going to impact you. Why is it down here towards the southeast 2 and 1 off towards the north? Is because the storm's not quite there just yet. Take a look at the forecast, though. This is from the ECMWF. It continues to track on that westerly track. I do want to note ECMWF actually is picking up on a little bit of a northerly jog here. I'm not quite on board with that just yet. This is still tracking in a westerly track at this time, so I still think the Casiguran area is going to be impacted. The good news, and I mentioned this in yesterday's update, though, is much of northeastern Luzon is really lowly populated compared to the Metro Manila area down there towards the south, and much of Visayas for that matter. This area is always hit by typhoons. They're quite used to it. So what we're going to be seeing is the biggest impact is being in a lot of these coastal communities with the high winds. And you really want to be making preparations. And what I mean by that is tying things down, trying to remove any light objects that can be easily picked up by the wind, because that's the biggest thing that causes injuries, especially in inland areas, is you start to get these winds picking up things, and well, that ends up causing flying debris and could cause injury. The other big thing is flooding and landslides. As we continue to look ahead with the forecast here throughout the day on Saturday and then going into Sunday, it moves over there in northern Luzon, and that's going to bring a lot of rainfall. So flooding in low-lying valleys and streams is a big issue, but also landslides. People traveling on some of these roads along the mountainsides are going to be looking at the threat of that. Something you want to keep in mind if you do plan on traveling. I don't recommend it, at least as this storm system is overhead here. Now, Wind's not the only issue. This is a great, from Project NOAA here, a great graphic showing you the threat of storm surge. Now, keep in mind, this is a tropical storm, but I think this graphic is going to be much more useful when we have a full-blown typhoon, a monster coming on shore. But what it does depict is the fetch areas and the winds coming in with that and the highest threat of storm surge. Fetch area is the length where the winds are blowing over. And you can see actually on western portions of Samar and Leyte out here, we actually have some areas that could see some sea level rise. Not a lot. Only 1 to 2 meters, but enough to cause some beach flooding or even some low-lying flooding here. And then even back here towards the west, around the Manila area, you're going to be seeing some rough waves in Manila Bay just because of those winds coming in from the west. Basically, I wouldn't even say Manila Bay, more or less western Luzon. I think that's overcompensating there in Manila Bay since we're not going to be seeing that strong of the winds there. But I do like this graphic, and I think it's a pretty good one, and Bagasa definitely taking the right step in the right direction. This is based off of that model there, and what we are seeing, the highest threat of storm surge there in Quezon, around 1 to 1.5 meters high. Storm surge level 1. This is our latest warning that we put in place. What this really means is beach flooding. Nothing too much more than that, but you definitely want to just stay away from the water. You got a tropical storm nearby. It seems like that is, especially with these smaller storms, one of the major leading of casualties as people go swimming or fishermen. You just want to stay away from the water, guys, and I think that's always one of the big things I always tend to stress here with these storm systems. Good news, we're not going to be seeing this type of impact there in the Philippines that we saw in Ulithi. That's island, that atoll there, just took the brunt of Typhoon Maysak, and we saw some very significant damage out here with that, and it just blew overhead as that Category 5 type of typhoon. So what I'm going to leave you with here is the Meteor app and the forecast as we continue to look ahead. We're going to be starting to see those winds and rains really pick up here on Saturday, and as we head through Sunday morning, expecting the storm system to near landfall as a severe tropical storm or possibly a low-end typhoon if that shear lets up enough. Big thing is, though, if you are ahead of that circulation, you're going to be seeing those winds really pick up here and even that threat of some flooding rains. And as I mentioned, beach flooding as far as the storm surge is concerned. So stay safe out there, guys. Just be smart about this one. That's a big thing. Just be smart about it. Get away from those low-lying coastal areas. If you are near a river and the river starts to flood, evacuate. Don't think about staying near your place. We have seen that in the past. Just play safe. That way, I want to try to get through this one with 0 casualties, especially given the fact that we have been talking about this for a week. It shouldn't be much of a surprise for people. All right, guys, stay safe out there, and as always, thanks for watching.